There have been several witnesses to a whole choir of monks eerily singing a mass every time someone in the nearby village passes away. The story behind these persistent presences over more than 400 years is quite dark. The location is Beaulieu, which is locally pronounced as Beaulieu Abbey in Hampshire, England. The abbey was established in the 13th century by King John and later occupied by 30 Cistercian monks sent from France. Its strange beginnings arose when, in the year 1201, this original group of monks appealed to King John for exemption from taxes. The king ordered that, for this, what he called outrageous behaviour, they were to be thrown into a dungeon and then fatally trampled by horses the following day. Strangely, overnight, King John had a nightmare of himself being whipped as punishment for his cruelty to the monks. When he woke up, he was covered in welts. He was so disturbed by the dream that he released the monks and gifted them the estate of over 10,000 acres in Beaulieu, enabling them to establish their own abbey and faith community. Over 3 centuries later, the monastery was humanely dissolved by Henry VIII in 1538 and then came under private ownership. However, there are many accounts of the ghosts of these still very active monks, collected right up until the present day. In his 1972 book of maritime supernatural phenomena, Raymond Lamont Brown reported a collective sighting of the ghostly monks around Beaulieu Abbey. He wrote that one afternoon in July 1937, 3 local boys named Colin Hillman, Roy Genvy and Ben Ham were fishing together in a dinghy in the Solent Strait. As the youths made for home, some strong cross currents swept them off course, by which time it had started to rain heavily. The boys decided to head for the nearest point on the shore so as to shelter somewhere. Eventually, they managed to beach the boat and found refuge in a disused boathouse. By nearly midnight, the weather had worsened, and an hour later the boys were becoming restless. Roy Genvy eased open the boathouse door to check if there was any sign of improvement in the weather. As he watched the rain still slanting across the beach, he suddenly spied a rowing boat heading for the shore. All 3 boys stared as 5 hooded men clambered out of the boat. The men were dressed in the white habit of confirmed Cistercian monks and were seen to file away up the beach in the direction of Beaulieu Abbey. By dawn, the weather had cleared and the mystified boys examined the shore where they had observed the monks land. They were unable to find any trace of the landed boat, nor were there any footprints in the sand. Later, their story was retold to their parents and friends, but no one could offer any logical explanation for what they had seen. The eerie singing of an unearthly choir is probably the most common experience of those living near the Abbey. It was just before Christmas in 1959 when motoring writer Michael Sedgwick was working into the wee hours. The then research director at the Montague Motor Museum at Beaulieu Abbey opened a window of his office, which was thick with tobacco smoke, only to hear the chanting of a Catholic Mass. He later described the singing as coming in uneven waves, as if from a faulty radio, and said that it was so beautiful that he tried to find it on his own wireless, but couldn't. That same evening, Bertha Day, who was the Abbey's catering manager, also heard the singing. She was aware that a local woman called Mrs. Mears had recently passed away. Later, Sedgwick and Day compared notes and realised that they had both heard the monks of Beaulieu Abbey singing a mass. Historically, this had been their custom when one of the inhabitants of the nearby village had died. However, of course, no monks had lived in the abbey since 1538. Sedgwick later went on to experience the singing on a second occasion. The ghostly choir was also heard by the wife of the film director Fred Zimmerman when he was filming A Man for All Seasons at the estate. Ghostly Gregorian chanting, a form of mass also practiced by Cistercian monks, has also been reported in the abbey. One witness was a guest staying in the house, Mrs. Elizabeth Varley. She reported that she was sitting by the window of her room late at night when she heard it. She said that the chanting was very clear and quite loud enough for her to pick up the notes of the chant. She also said that the sound, as of many voices in repetitive singing, faded and strengthened like a frequency from a primitive wireless. She wondered if the sounds came from some travellers staying nearby in the forest. But when she sang the tune the next day to another house resident, they recognised it as a Gregorian chant. She later discussed her experience with Guglielmo Marconi, the radio pioneer who was a friend of her father. He found the idea of playing back sounds from the past similar to the rings that spread outwards on the surface of water when it's disturbed by a thrown pebble. The previous Lord Montagu has said that he himself had witnessed neither the apparitions of the monks or the auditory phenomenon of their singing or chanting. However, he was aware of a haunting that was said to have emanated from a slaying in the abbey in the 19th century, an incident that involved a butler and a maid. The ghostly monks of Beaulieu seem so in your face that over the years some locals have got to know them by name. The Reverend Robert Fraser Powles was the vicar of Beaulieu from 1886 to 1939 and claimed to be in regular contact with them to the extent of being able to address them individually. He maintained that the ghosts attended services in his church, wearing their white or brown robes and accompanied by the smell of incense. Not all have been on such good terms. One member of a film crew working at the Abbey heard someone following him down a flight of stairs. When the footsteps overtook him, he was terrified, as whoever was there was invisible. Others have been unnerved by noises at night that seem to come from the former graveyard of the monks and have been likened to the sounds of a burial taking place. Many of the lay brothers of the Abbey have also been seen, who were dressed in brown as opposed to the white garb of the monks who had taken vows. Dame Margaret Rutherford, the English actress, once saw a monk reading in the ruined cloister, as did an Abbey staff member in 1965. During World War II, officers from a nearby anti-aircraft unit saw a group of monks near the church. In 1979, a monk was seen pruning the vines in the newly restored Abbey vineyard. Another regular sighting has been that of a blue or grey robed lady walking through walls and also creating a lot of noise in the private apartments. She is thought to be the ghost of the Countess of Beaulieu, Lady Isabella, who passed in 1786. Several visitors to the main house have also claimed to see her, and she was seemingly caught on film in the Palace House family home after hours. In 2013, a member of staff named Hannah Broughton was testing the camera of her new phone in the lower drawing room. While snapping images around the area, she saw what she described as a ball of light dancing around. At one point, the strange object metamorphosed into what appeared to her an enchanting figure wearing a cloak. Religious incense has also been smelt around Palace House, specifically within rooms that used to be chapels. Beaulieu's supernatural sightings seemed a favourite attraction to the writer Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of the legendary sleuth Sherlock Holmes. Conan Doyle famously held a séance in the drawing room of Palace House and made multiple visits there while researching paranormal activity in the location. The Montagu family has owned Beaulieu Abbey since 1673, with its previous lord quoted as saying that the ghosts there have never been anything but friendly. Perhaps the very busy monks are still grateful for their reprieve and long-standing occupation of the site.